Hey guys, thought I'd just show a short video of how to configure the Grafana setup that I've shown in an earlier video. I did mention about doing a video, so I apologise, it's been a while. So the method I've chosen to do it is with a Raspberry Pi, but you could do this on Linux or Windows or different ways. The Raspberry Pi is just a nice, easy way of doing it, quite low cost as well. Also gives you some other flexibility in the future if you want to do different things with monitoring and temperatures and bits and pieces. So the first step is to download your Raspberry Pi image. So if you go to raspberrypi.org, because we don't need the desktop, I've just went for the light version. So you can click on the download zip, that'll download. What you then need to do is write that image onto a USB stick. A micro SD card. So the application I recommend is Etcher. Brilliant application, and you don't have to unpack the image file or anything like that. So that was an older version. So you can see here, I've got lots of downloads. That's the latest one there. It's automatically selected the 2 gig micro SD card that I've plugged in the system via a small adapter. And then you can click flash and it'll unpack that, it'll go off and it'll do it and it'll verify. Okay, I'll just zoom ahead and then we'll take it at the other end. Okay, so that finished okay. Did take quite a while. I think it was because I was using it on a USB extension, so try to just plug it in the port directly on the back of the PC might be quicker. So what I've done is I've taken that micro SD card, I've placed that in the Raspberry Pi. One thing that did trip me up is a while ago they changed it so you can't SSH to connect in straight without enabling in that by default. It's a security measure. That would normally mean you've got to hook a screen, a keyboard up to it, but actually it allows you just to, if you place that SD card and you're back on your PC, and if you create a file called SSH with no extension, that'll enable SSH. So it's just a manual thing you've got to do. So once you've done that, if you fire a putty, if you connect to it, got mine connected over Ethernet cable, and then just doing an ifconfig -a. We can see this is our IP address, this is what we've had to connect to, and we're going to need that later when we're connected via browser. So first things first, we're going to do just an update to check that everything is up to date. So you do sudo space apt-get space update. What I'll do maybe is I can put this, going to be a few instructions, but not hundreds, so I can just place those in the description down below. What this is going to do is just going to go off to the repositories and just check that bits and pieces are up to date. And then what we're going to do is we're going to install two main components are InfluxDB, which as the name suggests is a database, and then we're going to install Grafana, which allows you to take that data from the database and easily visualize it and graph it, and it's a really powerful tool and allows you to do things quickly at the same time, so it's pretty good. Okay, so I've ran through the installation of all the components there. I did plan on doing this video a different way initially, where I'd go through each component individually, but to be honest, it's just cut and paste a lot of CLI commands. There's no real intelligence to it or anything like that. And all the commands are down in the description down below, so I don't really think that's necessary, and it's just going to make a massive bloated video. So after following the instructions total verbatim, what you will end up with is a directory. I've just called that ep-everlogger. So fire cd into that directory, and what we'll see is the a bunch of PHP files in a folder here. The PHP files here, majority of them are the ones that's from the library that I mentioned earlier on, and then the one I wrote is called logger.php. The directory is the files which allows InfluxDB to do the PHP stuff. So it's important that these are all inside this one directory. So if you want to move things around, by all means, but just if you get any errors, that's most likely why that's happening. So at this point you would have your choice of how you connect. So you're either going to have a USB device or you're going to use a Wi-Fi device. I'm using Wi-Fi, so I'm going to use SOCAT, and SOCAT basically redirects the output of a virtual serial port to a Wi-Fi device. So here you can see the SOCAT command. Again, I'll place this down below, but the one thing you'll have to change is this 192.168.0.108, and that's basically the IP address of the device that you're connecting to. So that maybe, well, will be different on your network. So you run that command, and then secondly, you then need to set the permissions of that virtual USB device, and you do that with the command shown there. Once that's done, you can then test it via the command line just to see if we've got some kind of connectivity. So I'm just going to do a sudo php logger.php. Basically going to use PHP to call the script I've written, and sudo is just doing elevation. And there you go. So what it's done, it's pulled back two sets of information, real-time data and statistical data. It's getting dark here now, so it's 10 to 6 in the UK in autumn time, so the array voltage for the PV is 15 volts, not actually generating any current at the moment. I've got a 24 volt setup, so my battery voltage is 25.6. And there's a whole lot of information on there which you can see. So that's great. Basically that shows we've got connectivity, which is an important thing. One thing I will say is that the script is configured for my environment. So what I'll do is I'll go into the script and I'll show you what you may need to change if you were to do things in your environment. So we're just going to do a sudo now, logger.php. Okay. So now I've pulled this up. The first thing to note is the USB device. So I'm using TTY USB 21, which ties in exactly with what was in the SOCAT command. So if you use a different virtual USB device in your SOCAT, you need to create the same items there. The second item you can ignore because that's the user for InfluxDB. We would create that later on. Actually, going back to this device here, one thing I would say is that if you're going to use a USB to RS485 adapter, when you plug that in, you would need to just input there, instead of the virtual USB port, the real USB port that you're using, and that would work just fine. So it doesn't matter if it's wired or wireless. And everything else should be bog standard. Those are the only two commands that you change. Just as a quick overview, I'll not go through the whole thing, but all it's doing is it's going through the information that was returned when we ran the script on the screen. It's basically taking that and parsing through it, and then it's putting that straight into the InfluxDB. And it relies on, apologies for that noise came through, that was my 3D printer finishing. It relies on the InfluxDB being local to the machine and running on the on the same Pi, the same as Grafana does as well. So okay, so like I say, basically make sure you've got that set. If you want to change the users in InfluxDB, this is where you'd have to come back and update your script. Okay, so I Control X out of that. What we'll do now is we'll fire a web browser, and we will need to create a example database in the InfluxDB, and then we'll be able to connect to that. Okay. Okay, so I've started a web browser and I've connected into the IP address of the Raspberry Pi that we recorded earlier on port 8083. And basically what it allows you to do is gives you a nice graphical interface just to create the database that we're going to use. There's very little that we actually need to do. By default is an internal database. So we're going to go to click the query templates drop down there. We're going to create a database, and then we just need to change DB name to Powerwall, and that's because I've hard coded that in the script. Again, you can create a database of a different name, but you would have to go back and change that in the logger.php. So if we just hit enter at that point, that's created our database. You can do query templates, show databases, and again enter on the command, and you can see there we've got Powerwall created. What we will do is we will create an admin user. By all means change this if it's going to be something public facing, but just as a test to keep things simple and to keep it generalized for the GitHub repository, I've just created a user root with password root, and it's basically got all privileges. So if we do that, okay, and then if we do a show users and hit enter, so we've got root and we've got the database created, and that's all we need to do inside of the InfluxDB. It's quite simple. So next we're going to fire up that's here 164, and this time we're going to need to connect to the Grafana setup, and that is on port 3000. Okay. Just having a little bit of a think, and then it should come back with a login prompt as the title bar there suggests. No, maybe it's not. Okay, there was a small error there on the trying to log in, and it had pulled up the wrong version from the repository, so I'll make sure the correct one's in the notes below. So once you've got here, this is basically Grafana started up. We're going to want to sign in. I've just put in admin there, so it's took that. So now it's going to kind of guide us through. We're going to add a data source. I'm going to go for the name. It's going to be Powerwall. The type of data source, we're going to drop down here to InfluxDB. That is going to be correct because we're using the local one. Going through proxy. Basic authentication, user root. In fact, no, that's the wrong place. This is where we're going to do Powerwall root. If we add that, we're not going to want to save that. So the data source is added. So data source is working, which is excellent. So save and test that. Yep, it's brilliant. See now there. Okay, so you got that. So now we can go to dashboards. I'm going to cancel that. Okay, so this is just basically all we needed to do was create that. We will use some gauges and such like, or you can use some gauges and such like, and so there's a whole host of plugins. As long as your Pi is connected to the internet, you can use these and install these plugins. You know, so just take you straight to the web there. Okay, so we've got that. So dashboards, home, dashboards, new. Sorry. Okay, and this is what you end up with, is a blank panel. So all things being equal, so we're going to do a graph. So what you do is you click on what you've just created there, the panel title, and click edit. The data source, we're going to change that to Powerwall, and then what that does is allow you to change some other items. So we can do okay, so we set the data source, and then this is where you go to select measurement, and you notice there's nothing there, and that's because at the moment we don't have anything in the database. So if we go into, there we go, and if we do okay, if you get this error, it's because basically you can't connect, so either the name's wrong or something along those lines. And basically for myself, it's because in between installing things, I've rebooted the Pi. Okay. Okay. So that should have launched the. So it hasn't returned an error. Don't know why I had to run it a second time, but it did. Do that. What I have noticed occasionally, when you run it manually, it'll get the first set but not the second set. But then quite often you run it again, and it has. Yeah, it's quite often it then get the second one, not the first one. You notice now when we've clicked on that, it's started to populate the database. So we can pull battery voltage, and it's hard to see, but that is, you'll notice the 25.6, and that's basically showing that we're starting to populate the database now. So if we go straight back into there, and if we change the voltage, there's loads of things that you can do with this. It's fantastic, and you can change the colours, the ranges, the legends, everything you want. Automatically it's went from 17.5 to 32.5, but if you know that you're always going to be running from 20 to 32 volts, you can place that in such like. So it's very handy. Sometimes I do find that you need to then instead of saying mean, you might want to remove that and click add, and then we can do select as and say last, which should select the last item. There you go, which is the 25.6. Because sometimes you get screwy results that come up. On the whole, that's it. One last thing we will do is we'll jump into the Raspberry Pi, and I'll show you how you would run this with the cron job, the script, so that'll just run constantly. So let's do that. So we're going to launch the crontab application, which runs in the background and allows you to then schedule applications to run. So we do crontab -E. I prefer to use nano when I'm editing. Okay, basically we're going to go down the bottom, and what we want is the to do star space star, which should be 5 stars. And basically what that says is it's going to run every minute of every day, of every hour, month, every weekday. And then after that you need to place your command. So we're going to run this command, which is php space and then the directory, the directory followed by the file name of the PHP script that we've installed. It needs the full path just so crontab knows where it's going. and if we do Control X, it's going to ask us if we want to save changes and say yes. Okay. And if we do cron tab -L, which will list, and then you can basically show us the file. And then what we should see back here, we click the manual refresh tab. If we show the last 15 minutes, actually we show the last 5 minutes. And then what we can do is do edit. Now try and remember where these things are. So on display, okay, we don't want those there. Okay, so if you change it from stack to connected, and then basically what you'll do is you'll get a line. So you'll notice there's nothing in that 2-minute period in this because there's been nothing in the database. What we should see is, because we've scheduled this to run every minute, there you go. So that 6:43, that's after, that's the current timestamp there. So that's basically that cron job is running. It's pulling that information in, and then it's great. So you can close that down there. Now you can either add panels, which you can do a single start. So we could do that. If we do edit, and we can have, let's see what we've got first. So we're going to see metrics and data source, power wall, select the measurement. So we can do the max battery input voltage today, and that's showing 26. Oh, is that the okay? And if we close that, then there you go. It'll automatically scale itself, but you can manually change these, and so you can place ones here. And there's a lot of configurability that you can do. One thing I will say is that it looks like I've pulled down a slightly older version on the repository. So what you should see, if we do 3 dots, add panel, if I do single start again, I'll edit this, go to add an item with a measurement, you will see real-time and historical listed there, because I found an issue when I was parsing these items. Some of them are present in both real-time stats and in historical stats. So what I've done is I've done a small amendment to the script, and that basically just makes it so that it separates those out and you get them much more granular, and that gives you those items you can select. So by the time you see this video, if you try these options, that'll be it. So there you go. It's basically how you have. I'm going to save that option there. Okay. And then, and if we can close that. So I should have given that more descriptive name, but next time you come in, you have your dashboard. But you can do different dashboards, so that means you could do a dashboard for the historical side of things, one for the real time. But the great thing is that you can just access this on a web browser, and you can also do it from your phone. It's not as great on the phone due to the size, but again, you could create a dashboard that is sized better for the screens, or has different stats on. Maybe it's not graphs as much, more the single stat ones there, so you get to see the information. And the beauty is that you can, just from a drop down, you can change it the last 15 minutes. You can do it today so far, last 5 minutes. And what I normally do is the today so far one is what I find handy. And then actually what we can do is, if we quickly add total consumed energy. Do there. One thing you can do is you can configure the unit. So if I scroll this up here, there should be an energy. And if we do that as kilowatts, so that's total consumed energy is 72 kilowatts. And that's something you can do for all of these. And it just makes a bit more sense, and visually it looks better as well. And you also have the option to do, say, 2 decimal places, which in a Powerwall would be quite handy, because you know, between 22 and 23 does make all the difference for something like a 24 volt base Powerwall. So there you go. What I'll do is I'll place all the commands down individually, but I think what I'll do is I'll do a script with instructions on how to run the script as well, and then all you might have to do manually is the cron job. So either way you want to do it, you can run this, like say, the commands manually, or you can just do the whole thing. Okay, cheers guys. One final thing, just to say that well, this is what we just quickly knocked up a couple of seconds ago. Just as a demonstration, this is the type of thing you can pull up and do. So it's a dashboard that I use. Still maybe needs a little bit tweaking, but just a demonstration how using the different gauges and have different colours for different areas. I use this so at a glance I know that my battery voltage is alright, because it's at 25.6. If it dips down too low, similarly with the battery temperature, but you can get the historical information, so I can see that, you know, that was the lowest point. The temperature was 11.3 last night, and just basically at a glance information, which makes life it makes it easier when you're managing the device, and just out of curiosity as well. But also this did greatly help this week when I had a cell fail on one of my Powerwall packs, and so I was able to see that the battery voltage just drastically dropped down, which may be visible on this. So there you go. So the last 7 days we can see there was two times it seemed to dip down, and the cell was failing. It got pumped up with the voltage the next day, but then it went even lower, and the cell had blown the fuses. Kind of picked up a bit. Had another issue with it dropping down again, but just sorted that was a faulty cable. Sorted that out, and then I switched the output of the Powerwall off, and just gradually letting it come back up to charge. But it's autumn here, coming into winter in the UK, so it's not going to get much charge. But yeah, that just basically demonstrates, and we can see what the load current is and other such items. Not sure what is taking an amp, but something's taking an amp. So yeah, so that was just a bit of a demonstration how you could see that.